Hey guys, we're back with another video. Special request by KTM Biker, I believe. Um, he wanted to know how we could use a logical switch to put the rates in high rates if we go to full flaps. So let's take a look at this. First of all, to get the flap menu, we need to go in here and set the wing type to at least one aileron and one flap. And that gives us the ability to do flight modes. So we put the D switch, that's normally what I use for flaps, let it control the flight modes. And I renamed this to flaps up in FM1, and FM2 is takeoff flaps, and FM3 is landing flaps. So straightforward here, just rename these and you're done here. And then since we have flight modes, we can use flight mode trim. And I use the aileron, set it from common to F mode. And the elevator, I don't trim the rudder. I center it and leave it centered. So I don't ever trim the rudder. I just eyeball it to center and don't trim it when the flaps are down or anywhere. So that's that. Well, let's go back. Logical switch, we need to do that. Here's our logical switch, and I renamed it to rate switch. So the first input is the flight modes in the transmitter. And the flight modes, like I said, are controlled by switch D. You can use whatever switch you want to for flight modes. And I use switch B for rates. So I noticed I tried to put switch B as switch 1 and flight modes as switch 2, but it won't let you pick flight modes for switch 2 for some reason. I didn't know that was the way it worked, but it doesn't matter. It just changes which way the selection moves when you reverse the switches, when it lets you do them the other way around. But in this case here, with the flaps up, we're in the top row. And what we want to do here is we've got 3 rates. So let's say 0 is low rates, and 1 is mid rates, and 2 is high rates. You need to get that in your head first, and then you'll know what to do. So with the flaps up, I'm in low rates, position 0 of the B switch, and this is mid rates. Right there, 1 is mid rates. And then the next position is high rates, and it's a 2. Now, if I lower the flaps, now instead of going to high rate elevator, I just went to mid rate. Now, as I move the rate switch, it moves between what would have been low rates and mid rates and high rates to mid rates. So with the flaps in the takeoff position, no matter where the rate switch is, we're in mid rates. And then if I go to landing flaps, now we use the bottom row, and I'm in high rates right now. This is mid rates, and this is low rates. So if we're in full flaps, landing flaps, we have 2s all the way across the bottom. So it doesn't matter where the rate switch is, we're going to be in high rates no matter where the rate switch is. So that's all there is to that. And all we're doing is using logical switch. We're not using the percent outputs over here. You can set 0 to a certain percent and 1 to a certain percent, whatever, to use it like to control flight modes. But in this case, we don't care what the percentages are. All we're using is the 0, 1, 2, and 0, 1, and 2. There's no 3. There could be a 3 and there could be a 4 if you wanted to set it up that way, but I think 3 rates is plenty. I don't think you need 5. So at any rate, that's all there is to this. With the flaps up, it uses the top row. In takeoff flaps, it uses the middle row, and in landing flaps, it uses the bottom row. And then that's low rate, mid rate, high rate. So that's all there is to that. And I named it rate switch right there so that I'll recognize it when I go into dual rates. So let's go into servo setup first, I guess. One of the first things I do when I'm setting up a new plane is I go in and rename the channels based on what they're going to control. And in this case, I use gyro receiver. So channel 7 is the flight modes in the receiver, and channel 8 is the gain. And I may have more than that. But at any rate, I rename the channels to where when I go to the monitor screen or I'm in something to set a channel up, I know what it is. The flap system, telling it that it had flaps, one aileron, one flaps, that gave us this, and it's set to flight mode because the only thing controlling the flight modes is the D switch. And I normally set flaps up to minus 100 and takeoff flaps to minus 25 and landing flaps to 100. And by doing this, I basically get 15 degrees for takeoff and 40 degrees for landing. I use an angle gauge to measure them. And then to actually set the throw, I go into the servo settings. Before I turn the airplane on, I will go in here and I'll turn the flap travel down to 50% so that I don't bind the servo up by having it travel too far in the up position or the down position. And then I turn these up equally. In other words, I want the same number on both sides. And in the up position, if the flaps don't align with the wing, then I use subtrim to set the flaps up position. And that way the travel is linear. So my goal is to keep, if I have 75 here, I want 75 here. Or if I have 95 here, I want 95 here, with opposite signs, of course. And then I use subtrim to kind of center the servo so that the flaps are up and even with the wing. But that doesn't really have anything to do with KTM Biker's problem, but I thought since I was here, I'd point that out. Also, the flap speed is 2 seconds. So let's see. Okay, dual rates. Now, this is what the whole thing was about, wasn't it? So we have 3 rates. We've got low, medium, and high. And with the flaps up and the rate switch in position 0, which is low rates, I'm in low rate aileron. And this is mid rate with the switch in the center, B switch. And then high rates is 100% with 25% expo. So if I lower the flaps, see, it went to mid rate. It's in the middle position. And the rate switch is in low. And then landing flaps is position 2. And we're at 100% with the flaps in landing flap position. So doesn't matter what as I move the rate switch, nothing happens because the flap switch is controlling the rates at this point. And then, like I said in my comment on the video, I'm gonna raise the flaps here. I don't turn the elevator down as far as I do the ailerons. I hate to be without elevator. That can ruin your day. I can deal with not having enough ailerons, but elevator, I would never turn the elevator down to 50%. Oh, I don't know. On a 3D airplane, you might could, but most airplanes, I either use 75 or 100%. and that's it. Normally I use 2 rates. I don't use 3 rates. Except on 3D planes, I will. I use low rates and high rates and 3D rates. 3D rates I'll turn to throw up to 125%, and high rates will be 100%, and low rates could be 60, 75, something in that area. But at any rate, the all 3 control surfaces use the same logical rate switch. Make sure you set that to the rate switch, the logical switch name. And generally, my expo is 1/4 of whatever the rates are, or 1/3, depending on how big the control surfaces are. But I always put the ailerons, elevator, and rudder on the same switch. I don't use separate switches for each one. That's just too much to keep up with. I try to set my low rates for all 3 surfaces and high rates for all 3 surfaces where they're balanced to where, the airplane feels right in roll and elevator, or roll, pitch, and yaw at the same time with one position of the switch, whether it be low rates or high rates. But anyway, when I lower the flaps, that was takeoff flaps, and that's landing flaps. It doesn't matter where the rate switch is. The announcements are coming from the flight modes, the spoken flight modes. They're saying what's going on when I move the flap switch, and then the rate switch under audio events. I use switch A for gear. I assume an airplane that's got flaps has also got retracts, but that's not necessarily the case. Of course, you can disable it by simply doing that, and if you flip the A switch, it won't say anything, but it's still sitting there in case you want to use it. And then the rate switch, you got low, mid, and high, and then throttle cut. On switch H, I like for it to say 2 completely different things. I don't like motor on and motor off, or throttle cut on and throttle cut off. I want it to say 2 completely different phrases so that I don't have to listen to that one word that's different. So motor on and throttle cut, 2 completely different things that are not easy to miss. So I don't know. That's pretty much it. So let's see. Logical switch. There's where the magic happens. Flight modes, switch B or C, whatever you use for rates, and just say 0 is low rates, 1 is mid rates, 2 is high rates, and just put the number in the box that's enabled when the switches are where you want them to be. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So what else we got here? See, the flaps are at 50%. Takeoff is -12. Flaps up is -50. So that's it. That ought to get you going. Catch y'all later. Thanks for watching.